It was just the most massive thing I've ever seen. To tell you the honest truth, I thought, well, we're the only ones left on this planet. Something's happened. We've missed something here.
The fear that went in me when I seen it was just like the feeling. I'd say it was fear, but I've never felt that feeling before in my entire life.
It's a weird feeling, like you can't explain it when you don't know. You feel like you're being followed, but you don't know what it is.
We had two to our right, another one in front of us, another one to the left, and another one just across the road, shaking the daylights out of the tree. All we get was a big red eye.
I remember waking up and looking at the end of the bed, and there was a figure there, almost insect-like, and then I blacked out.
Welcome to the show, everyone. My name is Cade Moyer, and you are listening to the Believe Paranormal and UFO podcast. If you have had an encounter and would like to share it, please get in touch with me. My email address is believepod@gmail.com. If you enjoy the podcast, be sure to leave us a rating or review wherever you listen, and head on over to our website, believepod.com, and consider becoming a member to get bonus episodes and video content. Tonight I'm joined by Nick, and Nick is actually a returning guest. He featured on season 17, episode 10, which was a Tales from the Voicemail episode. So Nick, welcome back to the show, mate.
Thanks, Cade.
Mate, it is great to have you on here, because a lot of those people who leave those voicemails for the Tales for the Voicemail kind of episodes, they have these stories that they want to share, and then that's kind of it for them. But I'm stoked that you got back in touch with me, because your story doesn't kind of just end there. And mate, are you able to kind of just quickly go through your voicemail that you left on that episode, just for any new listeners, and then we can carry on from there, because I know things changed after you left that voicemail.
Yeah, I think so. After that experience that I had on that episode, it sort of cemented some things for me, and it was like a piece of the puzzle. So that on that particular day, I had a worksite haunting in a quarry in the western suburbs of Melbourne, where I was working at the time. And it started off with, I was working underground, so we have these things called ground bins where all the crush rock comes and gets dumped into. And then underneath these ground bins, there's a big long conveyor. I think it was about 20 metres long, and it was all rusted out, fixing it up. And at one point I was working by myself. I sort of was getting a bit of a funny feeling being down in this sort of tunnel. It was hazy in there. It was a funny environment to be in. Like it just didn't feel right. There was a lot of steam and stuff. It was hot at the time. It was a warm day, and all the water was evaporating and dropping through the rock. Anyway, I was working by myself. A colleague had left, and I got a push in the shoulder. And it was a decent push, enough for you to turn around and go, what's going on? I thought it was one of the other guys I was working with. I hadn't noticed him walk down, but I would have heard him. Just got that feeling like, nah, get out. So I got out, and I told my workmate what happened, and sort of, he kind of shrugged his shoulders a bit like, was talking crazy speak or whatever. And I didn't go back into that tunnel without anyone else. I just knew I really could not for a little period of time. So, and then the second time we were there, it was probably maybe a month or so across from this ground bin section. There was like a little workshop, and then over further the rock gets fed into like a concrete batching plant. And there's probably a couple hundred metres away with conveyors, maybe 150 metres at the minimum. And so they were all working over there, and I had to do some stuff in the workshop. And I went over to the workshop, and as I was by myself and doing my thing, and I sort of had windows. It was like a dingy old little, it was only small, but it had windows sort of headlight right around it, so you could see people walking right around the whole thing. And there was this shadow that I walked past me where I was at like a bench, and I looked up, and I thought it was one of the other boys, and they were sort of, real larrikin type, and, real Aussie sort of blokes who like to play a few pranks. And I thought it was one of the guys walking around trying to get the jump on me or whatever, or come in and see what I was doing and stir me up. And yeah, I went to have a look, outside to see if there was someone walking around, and there was no one there. And I went right around, there was no one there. And then I kind of got that feeling that I had to leave. It was like almost like mind speak, and I had to get out of the area, or the little workshop I was in. So I thought, I'm going to go back and work with the rest of the crew. So it's about 150 metre walk over to where they were, maybe a little bit further. And next to this little workshop, there was a side office, and next to that was, I think it was 3 or 4, maybe half dozen 44-gallon drums. So I've walked past the side office, no one in there, and then I walked past these drums, and there was this like black shadow of, I don't know, it was just like a black hole. It was it was like the outline of a person, not an outline, it was like as tall as a person and its general shape, but it was sort of wavering, and it was just black, all I can explain is the darkness of a black hole, if you could think it like that. And I'm thinking, am I really seeing this, or what is going on? And this thing sort of imploded on itself. It's like the old tube TVs when you turn them off, the screen sort of comes in like that. Yeah. So that happened, and I'm just frozen solid. And out from behind the drums comes 3, I think it was 3. There was 3 crows or ravens that come out behind it and just flew off. And at that stage, I'm like, nah, I'm out of here. And I went back over to the other guys that were working, and I told them later on I had told them, but they knew something was up. I was white as a ghost, pardon the pun. But I was visibly something, you'd see something happen to me, and it took a little while for it to come out. So where this area is, I don't want it because it's decent, a large company, and it's in a fairly well-known area of Melbourne that's very industrious. So there was a little laneway at the back of this area, and one of the older blokes, I told him what happened, and he said, "Do you believe me?" And he goes, like, there was a murder in the laneway at the back of this place. It's a very isolated little laneway. You can't find it. I don't even think you can find it on maps, to be honest. I have a feeling it's a private road. There was a murder some years back. I don't know whether it was gang-related. And then he was saying that also one of the managers there had died. He'd been there for a long time and had died within the last 12 months of us being there. And at night time, so this place has got drivers and concrete as well for 24 hours. And the guys that are on night shift sometimes hear up top is the control room for the battery plant and stuff like that. They hear people walking around, or someone walking around up there, and in the middle of the night when there's no one up there, they hear chairs moving, footsteps and stuff like that. But no one, talk about it. But yeah, I remember going to a medium just after that, and I mentioned about that, and she goes, yeah, that was, because of this murder, and it was the spirit or whatever that was is super angry, and very, she said just probably, it was a good thing to lock it out. So, lock it out of your mind a bit too. But after that, I had to really sort of, I've had too many other things in my life to go, hey, what is this real? Like, what's actually going on here? And then I've done a little bit of work with mediums and healers and stuff like that, and I've benefited from it. And and they've said that I've got abilities and it's a generational thing. And I'm like, okay, tell me more. And that I'm highly empathic, I can feel energy, and that I'm 100% sure of now. And there's certain, I can't sort of pinpoint on what it is, but things just happen. So another medium thing that happened to me was a friend of a friend was doing was a medium who was developing their skills, wanted to do or connect me with another medium overseas and do a reading, so we can connect somehow. And she goes, yeah, I've got someone coming through who loves the news of the day, and he's got something wrong with his throat, but he's got this round object, like it looks like a watch of some sort. I'm like, who could that be? And he goes, and he's the story that he wants you to well, the thing he wants you to tell is your story. You know, get your story out there. And I'm like, okay, who's that? And I thought it might have been maybe, you know, a relative, long-lost relative, or, you know, grandfather, because my grandfather died before I was born, and he was born in the UK, and so I never met him, and things like that. But, I mean, I've got a trade background, and with trades, you always tend to get a few older blokes who become like your work dad. And one of these guys, post my finishing my trade, going in as a tradesman, he really took me under his wing, and I really looked up to him. He's a tough old bloke. He's one of those soul of the earth. He was an ex-Vietnam vet and used to smoke like a chimney. He always had a beer and on him, you know, after work and that. And he was just a really good bloke, and I learned a hell of a lot from him. I just wonder if he's still around, because he had a couple of health problems, and I hadn't seen him for a little while, probably a few years. And I went and searched his name, and the week that my first daughter was born, he died. And I didn't know, and that was the prior year. And all the things lined up to him, like, because he had throat cancer and stuff like that, and he used to have this old, like a pocket watch, or watches that were broken that he'd stick in his pocket. Loved it. Always was read the newspaper and that too. And yeah, so it's hard to discredit it. It's hard to go, like, it's just coincidence. And there's more substance to it than that. And I love shows like your show and Sarah's show as well that get people to talk about these things and normalise these things, because it is bloody hard to talk about it, because you're going to cop a lot of flack, because you're going to be really careful about who you talk to. And, you know, unless you're a really strong personality who can deal with the crap. And I feel a lot of people who have got abilities are a little bit more sensitive than most. And yeah, it is really hard to grapple sometimes.
Absolutely, it is. And the fact that you were essentially working at a concrete plant, like, these are burly guys who worked there. And the fact that you were already so open about the encounters that you were having there, that's a huge step to take, because it's one thing to share it with someone close to you, but to share it with the blokes who could basically just rip on you for the rest of your work existence there is, mate, that's ballsy, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was probably already the oddball out there anyway, so it didn't really matter. But I mean, and also, like, I wanted to know if anyone else had seen stuff, you know, as well. So yeah, like, I wanted questions answered. Like, you know, what is this? What's going on?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's so courageous that you kind of just acted on that almost immediately, because the fact that you've had a couple of encounters there is, like, that's really intriguing. It would make me wonder if that happened to me, like, to think, geez, 2 encounters in one location that's pretty full on.
Yeah.
I would definitely be asking around, like, sure, give me the tinfoil hat, I'll wear it, but did this ghost bump into you? Like, have you seen this thing? Because that's one of those things that would make you question, like, am I breathing too much concrete dust in here? Is the chemicals getting to me? Like, is this real? Is it not?
Yeah. And it's funny because, like, after I sort of it happened, and I was shit scared going there, to be honest. And you just had to deal with it. And I don't know whether I locked it out or what I did, but maybe it's just coming to accepting this is what's happened. It was still a little bit eerie. I don't know, maybe it's because of the experience and you're getting that sort of residual, I guess, it's in your head still. But, you know, it never felt quite right in there. Other people were a little bit creeped out with the area, you know, but others that were there working every day just carried on, just deal with it.
And, you know, the paranormal, it's like this funny thing that it'll only show itself to you if it really wants to.
Yeah,
you know, like, it's not there for everyone. And that's the reality of these kind of situations. And, you know, that's why you'll have blokes there who have probably worked there for 10 plus years who think you're off your rocker. Like, mate, I've never seen anything like this. But, you know, there could be a handful of other guys just like you have had, you know, exactly the same encounters, but don't talk about it.
Yeah. So I've recently changed careers due to a work injury that was quite a serious one. This was in 2022. So I had my injury in 2022. I don't know whether it was Indigenous, or because the area I was working at now is in sort of southeast Melbourne. There's a bit of Indigenous. There's some Indigenous sites around, or old Indigenous sites, and it has got some history of hauntings and stuff around there. I remember this thing. I was like, initially, what's going on? Like, it was always sort of after lunch or in the afternoons that I'd see something buzz around, sort of done around the workshop, to the point where it was getting in my face. Like, it was like right up in my face, and I could feel it, I could see it, and it was sort of hard. You could see it in your mind, sort of thing, and you could feel it around you, like it was there, and it was not happy that I was there, and it was right up in my ear. At some points, we were doing an afternoon shift, so we were there until sort of midnight, and it was that thing, whatever it was pretty active then, and but unfortunately I had an injury at that place, and I never got to sort of figure out what it was. But all I know, it was very dark, and it gave me the impression that it was either an old spirit, or it was burnt, or had been in the ground or something, because it was built on old marshes, a swampy area there, whether it's something within the swamps there, and it was not happy that I could see it, and it was not happy that I was there.
What does that do to you? Does that make you not want to go to your...
I think you just got to lock it out. You've just got to go, look, I'm here to do a job, and you've got to separate, that side of things with the side of things that, your day-to-day running. So you're there to earn a living, to make money for the client, really. So you've got that. So and also make money for yourself. So I've got family to look after and whatnot. You just got to sort of lock it out. And I think maybe that was part of the problem, was that you're projecting that you are stronger, and you've got to tell yourself you are stronger. And that, it doesn't like that, because you are going, I'm protected, I'm protecting myself, and there's not much you can do about it. So leave it alone, go away and do whatever you're doing. I've got stuff to do here.
Oh, absolutely. And, I find it so fascinating, the fact that a lot of people, I don't know, and this could be a Hollywood thing, this is a pop culture influence, is that a haunting kind of takes over your life. Like, if you live in a haunted house or you work at a haunted location, like, your whole life revolves around that, when the reality is, like, you still got to go on living your life. You've got so many commitments as a father, as a business owner, as everything that comes before a haunting, that still exists at the end of the day, and you still got to take care of that.
And now, a quick word from our sponsor. Also, are you wanting more content? Why not become a Believe Plus member? You'll get access to exclusive podcasts and episodes that aren't available to the public. Not only that, you'll also get our regular feed without any ads. Head to believepod.com/plus to sign up today for just $5 a month.
Yeah, 100%. You've got to live your life, and I think it's your mindset. Like, you can let this thing get on top of you and really grind you down, but at the end of the day, you can accept it, try and learn from it, and reach out to others. And I mean, we've got such a great community, especially online, to talk to others. Like I was mentioning earlier, that I reached out to Gary Lynn. I've had a lot of chats with Gary about my experiences and also about Yowies. Everyone loves a good Yowie story. It's just getting the understanding, to know that there's others out there that have had these experiences, and that you're not batshit crazy, really.
Definitely.
But yeah, and it's just grappling, and finding the pieces of the puzzle.
At what point did you realize that you were kind of sensitive to all of this? Because we were talking earlier, and you kind of mentioned that it was potentially something handed down through the family. At what point did you start to become aware that you were a little bit more in tune to things that other people weren't?
I think I've always had like this fascination with paranormal, but I've never really understood where it's come from. And it's only been like the real mainstream stuff, like Bermuda Triangle, or, Bigfoot in the States, or I don't know, some hauntings and some of the most haunted houses in the world. I think looking back at it, so my mum had a few experiences growing up, and also in her working life over in the UK. She's from the UK, and she would tell stories about that she'd seen ghosts, and that one of her friends had a ghost sit on their bed at like a family, and I can't remember if it was in London or she'd come from about 100 miles north of London. And also she would tell me the story about she's a nurse and worked at a fairly prestigious hospital in London where she was training, and she saw a nun's face in a window one day, and in a toilet block, and outside beyond that window there was nothing. Like, it was the outer window of the building. Apparently a nun had hung herself in that particular toilet block, and so things like that. But she sort of, I guess, she grappled with things like that too, and maybe there's stuff that she hasn't told me further. And then with my dad, who he would tell me a lot of his stories. So he's born here and he's a real fair dinkum Aussie bloke and soul of the earth, and one of my heroes. And he would tell us stuff about when he was younger. One story in particular, and I don't know whether it's Yowie related or whether it's an Indigenous spirit thing, but so he was an older parent, and so this would have been maybe in the, I'd say late 40s. Him and my cop would go rabbiting and hunting and stuff. Dad was a real outdoors sort of man, and go fishing and whatnot. When he was a kid, they went into this isolated area within southwest Victoria, but it's probably a good clock away from where we grew up. And Pop was out getting rabbits, or not entirely sure what he's doing, and Dad was in the old 1948 Ford, and he was sitting waiting for me, Pop, and you could see these figures running from tree to tree to tree whilst he was waiting, and I'm getting closer and closer to the car, and Dad was shitting bricks, and in the nick of time, the Pop turned up and they took off. But Dad will, mention that story a number of times about all these figures, and I don't know whether they're like the little fellas or whether it was a spirit thing or what. And then just before he died last year, Dad was saying that every now and then he'd be able to see like shadows and things moving around on occasion. That was interesting. Like that, that's when we're having these sort of paranormal conversations. There's something generational there, and it's not the first time I've heard it, but it's been a generational thing with other people too, where their parents have had abilities and it's been passed on, and now it's been passed on to my daughters as well. So my eldest daughter is highly empathic in the area. There's a couple of AYR, or many AYR sightings, and one's on the highway nearby, and so this is in southwest Victoria. Always, I think, with the Yowie side of things, I had no idea about Yowies until about 2018. So when I was working in interstate, and people mentioned about Yowies in the area we were working at, and I'm like, well, what's a Yowie? I thought it's just a chocolate that you buy off the, for kids or in the supermarket, and then found more about it, and I've sort of been hooked ever since. Getting back to where I grew up, I hadn't mentioned anything like that to my kids because I didn't want them to be scared of going in the bush, and I wanted to get them out of the city and back where I grew up and go camping and get them out of the concrete jungle where we are in Melbourne. And I remember it would have been 2022, and we were driving back to where my mum and dad are, and my eldest goes, Dad, there's like a big tall man like running alongside the car. And I'm like, where? And I hadn't mentioned any of Yowies to him. And she goes, there's something running alongside the car. And lo and behold, it was in some of the same spots that two of the AYR report sightings.
You're kidding.
As what's on the AYR webpage. So from probably 10 years ago, or a bit more, 14 years ago. And then I had to sort of explain to him, look, there are these things in the bush, and they're super high tech. They're beyond what we can sort of fathom, and they're highly intelligent. They're not going to hurt us if you put good intentions out there and do the right thing. You just leave them alone and they'll leave you alone. So, yeah, that absolutely blew my mind. And that's sort of touching on the generational thing. So she feels energy and so she'll see things, or both of them do, but they now understand about the hairy man, and I love a good Yowie story.
Absolutely.
And,
You're raising them girls right, I think. If they're into Yowie stories, I think you're hitting a home run in the dad department in my books, mate.
I appreciate it.
But I have to ask you, though, because when you found out your daughter's starting to get, like, sensitive like what you are, like, how does that make you feel? Because that means, like, their world's opening so much more to what you kind of can't control.
Yeah, it's sort of... I've had to do a fair bit of work. So someone else I had a bit of a session with recently, I have a feeling she's been on a podcast before, and it absolutely blew my mind, is Karen Pinnock. And so I got in touch with Karen, and just amazing. And she mentioned, look, the girls are, highly sensitive and empathic, and just you've got to be very careful because you don't want to hurt their nervous system, and you don't want to expose them too heavily to things too quickly. So I don't want them to be scared all the time, like, there's stuff going around that we can't see, that we don't know. But at the same time, you don't want to condition them to the norm where, oh, what's that noise and what's that, and, things going on. I want them to question everything. I want them to be able to find these things out for themselves a little bit and work them out for themselves. But, as time goes on, and I think they're getting it, it's sort of, I've also been given ways to protect them, that I can do for them, that I don't need to be near them. They could be at school, and then I can go, look, I'm going to protect them wherever they are to make sure they're safe for the day. Met numerous people that have got kids who are empathic, and there's proven ways to help your children if you do have children that are empathic. But it's always in the back of my mind, you're a parent, it's your instinct to look after your kids, so you want to make sure that you're doing the right thing and making them as safe as possible.
Yeah, absolutely, because, I'm a parent myself. I've got 2 daughters, and you just do anything for them, It's kind of just this unwritten thing built into being a dad. And I often wonder, like, if my girls ever got into the weird and the wonderful of the world, like, how would they comprehend it? Like, how would they understand it? And my girls are quite young, like they're 5 and 3 years old, and my 5-year-old is starting to understand, there's spooky things. They're learning about that type of stuff as they're getting older at school and things like that. And it's rather interesting that she doesn't find these things scary because she knows her dad talks about them, and they're nothing to really be worried about. If you're not kind of giving them what they want, you'll be fine.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think that's fantastic that you're kind of under that same mindset. Like, let them be curious about it, because we were talking before we kind of hit record here how, everyone's kind of almost brainwashed growing up to ignore these things and to block that out. Like, don't pay attention to that. And I think a little bit of natural curiosity about this, especially if you've got these abilities and things like that, it's only going to be natural for you to look into it a little bit more.
I think kids are probably more in tune to it than adults. As we get older, with conditioning and mindset, and just maybe it's how we progress as an adult, that we sort of lose touch with these things. And there's always stories about kids seeing things and going, oh, what's that over there? And talking to people, and there's no one there. And then later on in life, they're recalling that Nan and Pop used to sit by my crib and stuff like that. There's definitely something to it. But on the same token, you've got to let kids be kids too.
Exactly.
You want them to grow up, and everyone wants the best for their kids. So you just got to do what you can with a grain of salt too. And I haven't shut them off too much. Then there's the world we see, and there's another world out there as well, whether it's spiritual or in the bush. And they love getting out in the bush, and if it's not looking after or looking out for kangaroos and echidnas and koalas, it's looking for the hairy man.
Mate, I do have to ask you though, because before we jumped on the air, you also mentioned that when you were a young fella, you potentially had a little bit of Yowie activity on the family property. So, mate, I want to dig into that a little bit. We've got a little bit of time left. As you know, I'm a sucker for a good Yowie story. Let's chat about what was going on the family property, mate.
So one of the first memories of being, I guess, really shit scared is that now I see it as an actual, a Yowie encounter. I would have been between the ages of 8 and 10, so we're looking at probably around 1990. And I know it was a Saturday night because Hey It's Saturday was on.
A different story these days.
Yeah, that's it, 100%. And Daryl Summers was looking pretty youthful too. And so it would have been around 1990. And our house was sort of jutted out on a bit of a hill. We had a fairly decent sized property, and it had river frontage and an orchard on it, and a really old orchard. And down one side was the valley, like a bit of a valley that went from a bush block behind the house down to the river flats, and it was all forested. So something could go from the bush block all the way down to the river and not get seen at all. Plus, all the bush blocks, all the roads were treed. There was lots of bush blocks. They all linked right the way back to the Otways. As the crows fly, we were probably to the main part of the Otways, maybe 50-ish clicks. It was a good hour's drive, I guess. All I remember, and it has taken some time to figure out, because in my child's mind, I thought, it's just, my mind's playing tricks on me or it's something else, but there was these big, bloody yellow, saucer-shaped sort of eyes staring in the window, but it was down low, so we had like floor-to-ceiling windows right way around the house. The house was like a typical country ranch type of style, I guess, square, rectangular house, big concrete veranda right around it. And at that stage, we had minimal fencing around the house, or it was just mesh fencing. And it was easy enough to clear, especially if it was we're getting around, just step over and away we go. But there was certain areas, I used to be really scared to go to certain areas of the farm, and there was down in this little valley area, there was always like smells of like rotting flesh and stuff like that. And I just used to think, a lot of foxes and rabbits, and there could be a dead cow around too, because being a cattle farm. As a country kid, you get used to those smells. It's just like, it's just something dying, and just move on with it. But, there was always, especially at night, I used to be really shit scared to go to certain parts of this property without my dad, especially. We would go and do a bit of fencing, and we had a lot of hills on the property, and so we used a manual post driver to belt the posts in. And the noise that would give off and echo through the hill, you'd get like wood knocker, it follows back. And and I used to think, it's just someone else. It wasn't metallic on wood sound, it was wood on wood sound, that real woody knock type sound,
absolutely.
With a baseball bat whacking, like an old wooden baseball bat or cricket bat whacking something. And there's something with a bit of force too. So, I just would think, whatever, like someone else doing some fencing. But it was always sort of coming from the more bush blocks in the area. And then, as I found out about what Yowies were and getting more knowledge about it, it was just all the bits, it was like missing pieces of the puzzle. So we had a river frontage and river flats. So there was some fish, but lots of eels. We had an old orchard, so there's plenty of food. And, it was pretty much an undercover walkway going down the valley past the house to this area. And then with the sightings nearby, which would only be maybe 20 kilometres away on the AYR sightings, and they're on the Princess Highway, there's two. And then the sightings in the Otways, especially a really good one from Beaucamp Falls, and another one at Carlisle River, which is only probably, it was not very far anyway. Yeah, it was, like, what do you put it down to? It's that was the missing piece of the puzzle, and then it just shifted my whole world. It's like, we've definitely got Yowies in the area. And then that was sort of talking with Gary and talking with Karen too, and she mentioned, doing work with her. She said, there's definitely Yowies down there, and big cats too. So, there's some there's a cracker podcast called Missing Panther. Everyone should get around it because it's an absolute ripper.
Oh, yeah. Ben Bede, a mate of mine, does that one. It's the most well-done podcast I've ever heard of in my life.
One of my dad's old fishing mates is on it.
Kidding, eh?
Yeah, because we're only about half an hour directly to the coast, and where this guy had his encounters was probably about, well, not quite an hour's drive. But the old man reckoned he's seen a panther on the river flats quite some time when I was only pretty much a baby. So there's stuff going on there. There's 100% of stuff going on.
Oh, absolutely. And you're right. It's a dead set hotspot for Yowie activity, and your property's almost like a walkthrough buffet for them, because the amount of stories that I hear where Yowie's attracted to creeks with eels it's weird. It must be some divine taste for Yowies. They seem to be drawn to eels, and the fact that you live on an orchard, it's that is everything that they could ever want there, It's genuinely a walkthrough for them. So, yeah, mate, that's pretty terrifying, the fact that you also had these massive yellow eyes looking through the window. At 8 to 10 years old, that makes you think, geez, there's a monster outside. There's a genuine monster.
Yeah. So it's your child's mind too. You go, well, what the hell am I looking at? What is this? And at that stage, you don't know. And you think about what could be. I think I related to being like a dragon or something like that back then. But as you break it down in your head, other bits of the puzzle sort of fall in place. It's almost like it unclouds itself. Oh,
absolutely. And the foul smells around, everything kind of goes hand in hand, doesn't it? It's kind of every stereotypical element that would be associated with a Yowie encounter is really painting a pretty clear picture of something going on that property.
Yeah, yes. And there's also been, the old man mentioned a couple of UFO sightings in the area too. He was saying about how, I can't remember exactly, but a long time ago he told me about some fit guys that were fishing, whether it was along the river or nearby on the same river, because it goes for quite a distance out to the coastline. They were getting buzzed by some sort of lights in the sky. And anything's possible. You got to be crazy to think we're the only intelligent life.
Oh, I think ignorant as well.
Yeah, look at all the accounts and stuff. And look at all the Yowie accounts too. There's got to be something, 2,500 sightings since, I think, the 90s or something like that, or late 90s.
Exactly.
Yeah. And climbing.
And I always say because I have a couple of mates who will kind of, riff on me about, oh, mate, you don't believe this type of stuff, do you? And I say, well, look, out of all these thousands of stories of people seeing, Bigfoot, UFOs, Yowies, and things like that, it only takes one of those to be real and everything's changed. The world's a completely different place. Take a second to realize that, and it completely changes the perspective of that conversation.
Yeah, it's whether you want your paradigm to be shifted.
Yeah.
You can be stuck in your rut. You can have all this evidence, but you can be stubborn as hell. And that's your outlook, and that's your...
And the problem is, we're moving into this world now where before everything was Photoshopped, then everything was CGI, and now we're moving into the world of AI where everything is AI. So it's always going to be a bit of an uphill battle for people like me and yourself there, Nick, where we don't need the convincing.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to change a lot and make it harder, I think, for people like yourself and me to convince people about what we see and what we come across. But I mean, look, like saying before, we've got this great community out there, especially online, and we look after each other and we don't take shit from people who tell us otherwise. We want to hear each other's stories. So,
yeah. Oh, man, yeah. Absolutely. And, I really want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to sit down and talk with me, because I know these things aren't really easy to talk about. So, mate, my hat absolutely goes off to you, Nick, because all the power to you for doing it.
And likewise to yourself. I mean, it's only like saying before, shows like your show and Sarah's show too, Yowie Central, and the shows over in the States like Wes Germer's shows, Sasquatch Chronicles, that have really solidified a community to help people and get our stories out there. I commend you for that, and it's been an absolute honour being on the show too.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Believe Paranormal and UFO podcast. If you have had an encounter and you would like to share it, please get in touch with me. My email address is believepod@gmail.com. Finally, don't forget to follow us on all our social media outlets and be sure to join our Discord server to talk to other listeners of the show. You'll find all these links in our show notes. Thank you.